Think about the last time you went on a long road trip. You probably relied heavily on a GPS, a smartphone, or at least a paper map. Now, imagine making a journey of thousands of miles across oceans and deserts without checking a single screen. Every year, millions of migratory birds do exactly that. They manage to hit a single tiny patch of land halfway across the globe with absolute pinpoint accuracy. This spring, I had noticed a bunch of birds nesting around my house in the exact spots that they did in previous years. And so I ended up going down a rabbit hole of researching how birds have such good navigational skills. Because how do you fly halfway across the world and still manage to come back to the exact same lamppost as last year? It turns out that birds are reading sort of an invisible map, per se, through the Earth's magnetic field. Not only can they see the Earth's magnetic field, but they can feel the strength of it as well. And combined, they use those two sensations in order to determine their exact location, which is what helps them navigate. So let's quickly cover some basics. What is the Earth's magnetic field, and why does the Earth have a magnetic field? The Earth's magnetic field is essentially a massive invisible force field that wraps around our planet. It protects us from harsh space weather by shielding us from solar wind and cosmic radiation. This might sound similar to the ozone layer, which you might be familiar with. The ozone layer acts as a chemical sponge outside of our Earth to absorb harmful radiation from the sun. So, in reference to the ozone layer, the Earth's magnetic field protects the ozone layer, so it's outside of it. It can be said that they work together to protect the Earth, however, they're not really connected. So the Earth's magnetic field flows out from the bottom of the planet, which is the South Pole, and loops all the way around to the North Pole. So, why does our Earth have a magnetic field to begin with? Well, the Earth emits a magnetic field because our planet's core is essentially a giant, churning electric generator. Deep inside the Earth's core are liquid metals that conduct electricity. The center of the Earth, as you might know, is really hot, which causes the liquid metal to boil. As the planet rotates, it spins all of that boiling liquid metal into whirlpools. And when you take a highly conductive fluid, such as these liquid metals, you heat them up and you spin them, it creates a massive electrical current. As you might have learned in physics, whenever you have a moving electrical current, you get a magnetic field. Now, that may sound a little complicated, but don't worry. A bird's use of the magnetic field doesn't require a deep understanding of how the Earth's magnetic field works. It's just some background information in case you were curious, like I was. So, what allows birds to be such great navigators? Firstly, birds need to know which way to fly. To find their direction, they don't just feel the Earth's magnetic field, but they actually visually perceive it within their physical environment. Inside a bird's eye is a light sensitive protein called cryptochrome. This protein specifically reacts to blue light, so, in as simple of terms as I can put it, as a bird flies, cryptochrome reacts with blue light, which triggers a chemical reaction that allows birds to see the magnetic field. Now, it's not clear exactly how the magnetic field appears for birds, since we have no way to see exactly what they're seeing. However, it is fairly certain that it appears on their environment in some way, either as maybe patterns or lines, because magnetic information is processed through cryptochrome in the eye, which travels through the optic nerve, and the optic nerve sends visual information to the areas of the brain responsible for sight. So it's pretty logical to assume that birds visually perceive the magnetic field. Through my research, I would say that this perception is likely similar to a pilot using a digital display on a cockpit window. The bird sees the physical world, but with a navigational guide layered directly over it. Using this, a bird can know which direction is north or south, leading them to easily figure out which way to point to get to their destination. In my own curiosity, I figured out that humans too have this cryptochrome protein in their eyes. Technically, the hardware needed to perceive magnetic fields exists in human eyes, but it seems that our brain is not wired to interpret these signals as birds can. My sense of direction is pretty horrible, so I would love if we evolved the ability to interpret the Earth's magnetic field in the same way, which is unlikely, but a girl can dream. Let's dive back into cryptochrome for a second and describe how this protein leads birds to perceive the magnetic field, since many organisms have the cryptochrome protein in their eye, but a lot of them cannot perceive magnetic fields. When blue light from the bird's environment hits that cryptochrome protein, it knocks an electron loose and creates what's called a radical pair. Think of a radical pair like you and your favorite ex. This radical pair is physically separated, but it's still quantumly entangled and constantly influencing each other. Depending on how long the Earth's magnetic field lines intersect with this radical pair, it changes how long the chemical reaction lasts. That timing difference is what creates the light and dark patterns in the bird's vision. So, yes, birds are basically using quantum physics just to figure out where the nearest bird feeder might be. Using the visual perception of the magnetic field to figure out which direction to travel is Helpful, but not entirely useful if a bird can't tell where they currently are. For this, birds use an internal sense of the magnetic field that comes from their beak. I had a pretty hard time believing that birds sense the magnetic field through their beak because that sounds insane, but it is true. Their beak contains an iron based mineral called magnetite. Because magnetite is a microscopic metal, it physically twists and aligns in response to magnetic intensity, which allows birds to feel the strength of the spot they are currently on. The Earth's magnetic field strength changes drastically depending on your location. It's super packed and intense at the poles, but much weaker down at the equator. So, by feeling shifts in the magnetite in their beak, birds can calculate their exact north south position. If we want to dive deeper into how magnetite sends information to a bird's brain, we have to look into the trigeminal nerve. Magnetite clusters are wired directly to the trigeminal nerve, which sends regular updates to the bird's brain. Using this information, birds build somewhat of a cognitive map. It's a literal 2D grid in their minds, which is a level of mental math that would overwhelm most people. Now, you might be saying, hey, don't we also have trigeminal nerves? Why don't our trigeminal nerves make us a mental map? I mean, you're probably not saying that, but yes, humans also have trigeminal nerves. It's one of the largest nerves in the human head and gives your face sensation and lets you chew your food. But the difference is how these nerves are wired. Even if we did have some iron mineral in our body, our nerves aren't plugged into them. A bird's trigeminal nerve, on the other hand, is hardwired directly to the magnetite in their beak. So, while a bird's trigeminal nerve is busy doing advanced quantum matrix navigation, our human trigeminal nerve is just letting us feel brain freeze when we drink a slushie too fast. So, combining the directional guide from their eyes with the intensity map in their beaks gives birds a perfect, complete set of coordinate points. So, without this beak map, a bird might see its eye compass pointing north, but it would have no idea when it actually arrived at its destination, and it could just keep flying forever. If you played Minecraft as a kid or any game with a coordinate system, you can picture the visual sense as the compass and the beak intensity sense plus the visual sense as your full coordinate system. And if you've ever lost your house in Minecraft, you know how helpful the coordinate system can be. So that is my quick, simplified explanation of how birds are such amazing navigators. I'm truly so jealous of the complex systems they've evolved as I get lost in grocery stores. However, this biological system has one big weakness, which is us humans. Because bird sensors are tuned in to detect incredibly subtle, quiet natural forces, modern human technology easily jams their signals. We're harming their navigational systems in two different ways. Firstly, our massive blinding cities and street lamps completely overwhelm the bird's eyes at night, which makes it difficult for the light sensitive protein cryptochrome to see the magnetic field. Secondly, devices like radios produce an invisible haze of magnetic noise, which creates a fake intensity that blocks the magnetite in their beak from tuning into only the Earth's magnetic field. It would be like trying to listen to what your friend is whispering to you in the middle of a heavy metal concert. When a bird's map signal is jammed, they end up in a state called vagrancy. Vagrancy is the term basically for getting super lost. It's when a bird gets blown off course and winds up in an entirely unfamiliar place, far away from its actual destination, which leads many birds to fail to locate food and shelter, ultimately leading to death. We can help out by doing simple things, such as turning off unnecessary outdoor lights during migration seasons, especially. That is all from me. Thank you for watching, and I hope you found my random deep dive into bird navigation as interesting as I did.